Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 7.30, What Sunset Will Take Me. We are back.
Damn. Which one? Which sunset will take you? Actually,
know.
when you're in a sci-fi setting and you go to different galaxies, I guess
question.
there are... Yeah, which ones?
Soul, the original, the OG.
Damn. Is that what it's called now, Soul, instead of the sun, since there are now multiple suns?
Yeah, sure, let's go with that. It's called Soul. But
All
not
right,
like the
guys...
usual SOL, it's Soul, like a human soul. No, I just decided.
Damn. Because it's the soul of our society, where civilization began.
No, they don't care about it enough to say that.
Damn.
It is a
I'm sure there's
footnote
there's gotta be some poets out there that say some weirdo shit. You know, like those weirdos that, like, care way too much about Rome? There's gotta be people that care way too much about Earth.
Yeah. But in terms of culture, it is a footnote, mostly.
Damn. This is so sad. Okay. Roy gulped down his beer, savoring the way it made his thoughts indistinct. The final screams of his father, the growing chill of his sister's body, all of it blaring away into nothing. He looked around the room, blinking blearily as he put his hands down on the old wooden desk. This dark, dusty, windowless room had once been intended as Abraham Oliphant's personal office. He'd never had the chance to use it for that purpose, but it had fallen into Roy's possession all the same. The cold nerve center of a criminal syndicate. Had he wanted this? He honestly couldn't even tell. When he'd left his father to die, left him to slowly fade away underneath the starport... Wait, what happened to his, weird scurrant guy with the bomb? Did he blow up?
Oh yeah, he got fucked in the explosion.
He truly believed it had been a decision on the spur of the moment. But was that true, or had that been the excuse he'd told himself? Abraham Oliphant had been a merciless, cunning man, planning out his betrayals many years in advance. His blood ran through Roy's veins. Perhaps he was just the same. Whatever the case, there was so much to do. First, he had to consolidate the Oliphant clan assets. All of the other major leaders were gone, so it was up to him to reorganize everything. The kids were far too young to take up ownership of their parents' branches, so was he best off keeping control of them until they grew up? Or was that just Abraham Oliphant speaking again? Selfish genes straining for command. He could have laughed. Would he spend the rest of his life questioning every single decision he made, wondering whether the ghost of his father was puppeteering him? Perhaps he deserved that, but it would be exhausting all the same. It had to be done all the same.
Well, yeah, let me change that.
It had to be done. It had to be done still. We did it. Roy cracked his neck, tapping on the holographic keyboard in front of him as he sent off messages to all the associates, letting them know of the change in leadership. Change this dramatic would be met with resistance, people eager to test the new leader's strength, but there was no avoiding it. There'd be far more blood before all this was over. He sent the message off with a swipe of his fingers. What voice should I use for this?
I'll do a generic one just for this first line.
You got a second? Asked a voice from the dark corner. Roy looked up, sucking in a sharp breath. An assassin already? Aether broiled around his biceps. He hadn't rolled today, but his strength would be enough to see him through. Whoa, pal! The voice chuckled, its owner stepping out into the light. Roy recognized him, the mercenary with the green coat, the one who'd come to their aid. Skipper. Not here to cause any trouble. Roy sniffed. Sorry I talked weird earlier. I had to clear my throat. Roy sniffed. Sneaking into places like this ain't exactly the best way to stay out of trouble. Skipper's grin widened. Yeah, never been my specialty. But we never got a chance to talk, you and I. Especially now that you're the boss man. This, Roy understood. The endless asking for favors. A test of a different sort. You'll be well compensated for your efforts, he said, the formal words heavy and uncomfortable on his tongue. If that's all, then... nah. Skipper clicked his tongue. That ain't all. He threw a bundle of files, pages and pages tightly bound, down onto the desk. Roy's eyes as he recognized the words visible. Roy's eyes widened as he recognized the words visible. These were Carla's intelligence files, reports on potential threats to the family both within and without. They'd vanished on the night Jacques had died. Roy had assumed Carla had destroyed them, but it seemed not. Roy looked up at Skipper, his mouth a flat line. What is it you want? Skipper's grin became a smirk. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Rico looked down at his hands, both the one he'd been born with and the one he'd been given. I thought he was past the window for panacea. Oh, never mind. Only the former was attached to his body, and it held the plastisteel prosthetic in its hand. It was a wonder of engineering, truly, able to seamlessly connect Rico's nervous system with all the difficulty of snapping two children's building blocks together. Dan didn't get the rights to say Legos, guys, sad.
Well, Lego wouldn't exist anymore. It was destroyed in the Gene Tyrant's age.
Let's be honest, the Legos absolutely would have survived. Didn't have quite the same depth of sensation as an organic arm, but you couldn't have everything. He was lucky to have such a thing. Rico sighed. It was awkward doing it with one arm, but he managed to fold the prosthetic at the elbow and stuff it into the backpack he'd prepared. He wouldn't be giving himself two hands until he knew what he wanted to do with them. I forgot her voice. "You're really leaving, then?" came Chloe's voice from behind him, and Rico nearly jumped out of his skin from the sudden noise. He turned around. All in all, the events on the cradle had only taken a couple of days, but if you looked at Chloe, you would have thought it had been years. Her gaudy, elaborate outfit was no more. She wore a pale hoodie, hands stuffed into the pockets, and the bags under her eyes betrayed the fact that she had slept poorly. She smiled, a lopsided smile, but there wasn't much joy in it. It was like all that had happened here had burnt all the pomp and frills off of her. Rico couldn't help but think that was terribly sad. "Yeah," Rico smiled back, leaning against the railing. "You come to see me off?" Below in the hangar, the crew of the ship Rico had aboard were loading the last of the cargo. It would probably take only a few minutes more. A few minutes more, and then something new would spread out before him. "Don't have to leave, you know," Chloe muttered, joining him at the railing. "With Grandfather gone, things will probably get a lot better." Slowly, Rico shook his head. "It doesn't matter who's in charge of the elephants, you know. We're still the elephants. We are people to make money. Uncle Roy's in charge now, right?" Chloe nodded, biting her lip. I can't help but feel... Am I doing his voice wrong? I can't remember what it was.
It's kind of like that, yeah.
Her discomfort was understandable. Roy was only in charge because no other senior members were left. Uncle Jacques had choked on his own throat at the start of this whole thing. They'd found some of Carla's bones and tongue in the cockpit of her hidden-away ship, and his own mother. When they'd come back to the hospital, they'd told him that his mother was dead. She died on the battlefield. Since then, a sense of numbness had grasped him utterly, but strangely enough, that had lent him some clarity, too. "In the end," Rico said, looking straight ahead, "it doesn't matter who's in charge. People is hurting people. The only difference is that Roy's less of an asshole about it. But that's not different enough." "Where will you go?" Chloe asked, drumming her fingers against the metal. He told the truth. "I'm not sure yet," Rico said, cracking his neck. "This is a merchant vessel, so I guess I'll just go wherever they take me. I'll figure out where I want to go next once I'm there." "That's it, then?" Chloe snorted. "You're just gonna wing it?" "Yeah," Rico smiled softly to himself. "I'm just gonna wing it." This was for the best. A quiet, discreet exit from a place he didn't belong to anymore. No blood, no guts, and no drama. Just the end of one day and the start of a brand new one. Rico stepped back from the railing. "Time to go." "Ricky! Ricky!" Rico couldn't stop his smile from widening into a grin as Scout charged into the hangar, tears in his eyes as he shouted. So much for a quiet exit. Scout's eccentricities didn't... Eccentricities? Eccentricities? Yeah. Okay, I forgot how to say words. Scout's eccentricities didn't seem to have been lessened any by the events of the last few days. "Don't leave without saying goodbye!" Scout sobbed, scooping Rico up into a devastating bear hug. Behind, he could hear Chloe laughing at the sight, her sorrow lessened just a bit. That was nice. If he could leave them with that, he'd be satisfied. "When will you get bored of hurting people?" His teacher had once asked him that. The truth was that he'd gotten bored of it a long, long time ago. It's time to see how exciting the opposite could be. Dragon found Fix smoking on the roof of the Elephant headquarters, the smoke drifting up into the sky as the man breathed out. He turned to glance at Dragon as he approached. "Hang on, I have to drink water before fucking...
Oh, yeah.
"Guess you're leaving?" he asked, but from the sound of his voice he already knew the answer. "I am," Dragon said, voice dull. He stared out at the city, any mystique it held reduced by the relentless glare of daylight. "Thought I'd let you know." "Appreciate it." "Okay," Dragon said. "Bye." He turned and went to leave. To tell the truth, he didn't know what sentiment had possessed him to come say goodbye to Fix, but he was already regretting it. It would have been better just to get out of this place as soon as possible. "Hey, kid!" Fix called out. Dragon kept walking. If he didn't turn around, there was a chance Fix would just think he hadn't heard him and give up. Then he could just get out of here. He should have known better. Asmodeus, Fix did not give up. "Kid!" Dragon turned away, and Fix flicked away his cigarette as he took a step forward. He scratched the back of his gray neck awkwardly as he spoke, words loath to leave his throat. "It was good to see you," he said, voice scratchy. "Good to see you're doing well, I mean. Good to see you got good folks with you.
Reliable folks.
Okay, is that all? Fix blinked, opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again.
That's all,
he finally said. Dragon turned to leave again. Skipper had wanted to grab some last-minute supplies before they headed off, so if Dragon hurried back, he could probably grab an hour or two of shut-eye before the rest of the crew got back. After the stress of the last few days, his body would certainly appreciate that.
Kid!
Fix called out again. What? Dragon hissed, whirling around, glaring at the skirt. If you want something, just say it! Stop playing these games! What is it? Fix hovered awkwardly on the spot, hands still outstretched as if to stop Dragon from leaving. Slowly, it settled back down to his side. He blinked slowly, eyes sad as he looked down at Dragon.
How long's it gonna be like this, Dragon?
He asked quietly. Like what?
Like this? Still, after all these years? You hating me? When can things go back to the way they were before? They were better back then.
Dragon's hands tightened into fists as he stared at Fix. The cold anger flooding through his veins was such that he could barely see the rest of his surroundings. Only Fix, the object of his contempt, was clearly visible. When Dragon spoke, his voice was a dull monotone. You killed my mother, Fix. This is as good as it gets. When Dragon turned to leave that time, Fix made no move to stop him. Check this out, Bruno said, tossing a script over to Ruth. She caught it in midair, lounging down on her bunk as she held the script above her head. The Slipstream number 3 wasn't big on space, but it made up for it in comfort, when it came to bedding at least. Ruth frowned as she turned the script over this way and that. Looks the same as usual. This meant to be new or something? Bruno sighed, closing his eyes. It's the same script. I'm talking about the news article. Oh. Ruth tried to sound out the words on the screen for a moment or two before giving up. What's it say? Remember Lily's place, XK12 or whatever? It joined the UAP a few days ago. It's called HexK now. Not bad, huh? Wonder how Lily put all that together. Serena answered him from his own mouth. I bet she asked really nicely. There was the distinct sound of shuffling as Skipper sat in the pilot's seat as he made some checks of the system, turned and frowned. What? He asked, severe disappointment in his voice. I couldn't just stay independent.
It's for protection, I guess, Bruno shrugged. They are right on the border, after all. Someone was going to come calling eventually. Better the UAP than the supremacy.
I guess. Still, Skipper sighed. They were free, weren't they? I have no clue, talking.
I'd rather be safe and a little free than totally free and totally unsafe.
Skipper shook his head. Can't relate to you there, Mr. Dell said. It's total freedom for me any day.
Which is why we end up taking hostage wherever we go?
We all want what we don't have, Skipper grinned, turning back to the console. Speaking of which, he flicked the switch and the exit ramp opened up, letting Dragon back aboard before he could open it up himself. He strolled up into the ship, sighing as he took a look around at the gathered crew. Oh, he said. You're all back early? He didn't sound nearly as happy as his words would suggest. When I thought about leaving you here all on your own, Skipper smirked, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Real bleeding hard, yeah? You have fun at the Elephant Building? Dragon narrowed his eyes. How do you know I was at the Elephant Building? Saw ya. I was there too. Paid a little visit to the new head honcho of the family. Roy? Dragon asked, collapsing into the warmth of the co-pilot's seat. How'd that go? Well, Skipper dragged the word out. I reminded him of how gracious we'd been, lending his family a hand in their hour of need, yeah? If we hadn't been there, things could have gone a lot worse. Dragon raised an eyebrow. The guy we were supposed to be protecting died anyway. Well, yeah, but there's always a worse. If you say so. And what did Roy think when you, reminded him of this? Well, who can say? Skipper shrugged, but there was a conniving gleam in his eye. Dragon had the distinct feeling that he'd gotten whatever it was he'd wanted. Seemed he always did. Alright, I'm gonna pass it to you.
Are you there? Bruno called out into the cavern of his mind. Of course I'm here, Bruno, Serena replied instantly, her chirpiness detectable even in the theatre of the mind. What's up? Nothing. Never mind. Bruno settled back in his bunk as Dragon and Skipper rattled back and forth, tossing his muted grief over in his head. Back there, for just a moment, Jakob had been with them, hadn't he? He'd run cock through with that knife of his, and that'd be the end of it. How long had he been there? Had coming out been a conscious decision, or just some lingering instinct? Was he still here? Bruno could only answer the last question, and could only do so with his gut feeling. Jakob was gone for good now. When he cast his gaze through the space of his brain, he could find no trace of his source. Before there had been scraps of memory and will, the shredded remnants of consciousness. Now there was nothing. A great sadness had washed over him when he realised Jakob had truly left this world, but at the same time, it was something of a relief. Before, it had been like he was always constantly sharing his head with a corpse, its cold breath always on his neck, its rot always trailing through his nostrils. It faded into the background over time, but it had always been there, a constant discomfort. Now, though, he wasn't alone, but he was as alone as he cared to be. Just him and Serena, walking on the same 2 feet, grasping with the same 2 hands, without the shadow between them. He glanced up at the rest of the crew. Ruth had gotten up, joining Dragon and Skipper. They were discussing something animatedly, Skipper and Ruth grinning, Dragon rolling his eyes every few seconds. Looked like fun. A smirk played across Bruno's lips. He wasn't alone in that regard either, was he? As he got up and strolled over, Skipper turned his gaze to Bruno. "Good to see you're joining us," Mr. Dell said. "Any ideas for our next destination?" "What?" Bruno raised an eyebrow. "You're asking me?" Skipper waggled his own eyebrows in turn. "You know me, I've always been a democratic guy." Behind him, another eye roll from Dragon. Bruno considered it, putting a hand to his chin. After a few seconds, he answered. "Somewhere we've had so much damn trouble?" "Somewhere we've had so much damn trouble," echoed Skipper, turning back to the console. His hands danced across it like he was playing a musical instrument. "I'll give it a shot, pal, but you know..." Skipper twisted a dial and the ship roared into life. Ruth didn't budge, but Dragon noticeably bounced in his seat from the turbulence. As a weightless feeling settled over the rising craft, Skipper glanced back at Bruno. "That really ain't our style." The ship flew on.
Like a fucking magic school bus on deck. Beep, beep. But wait, didn't he have a grand goal? Aren't there, like, places he wants to go? Or did he just kidnap Dragon for the fuck of
Well,
it?
he's acting very careless, but he did, like, sneakily show up at Roy's new office with, like, secret files that he did not mention later on.
Who knows? Also, Aetheral Space fans, I'm highlighting a paragraph. He glanced up at the rest of the crew. Ruth had gotten up, joining Dragon and Skipper. They were discussing something animatedly. Aetheral Space animated series confirmed?
Oh!
Hello?
But yes, there was a bit back in this, near the start of this arc, where there was like, where the fuck is Skipper? I can't get in contact with Skipper. He was stealing files.
Stealing files?
Yeah, they vanished, but they didn't vanish. Skipper fucking yoinked them.
Skipper, stealing files? No, papa.
So that he could then give them back later for brownie points.
That's so funny. Actually based. So what is he cashing them in for? What does he want?
We don't know yet. We don't know.
I'm guessing this whole like going around the galaxy and gathering allies is so he can have his endgame moment when they go fight the Supreme and everyone shows up and the music plays. And it's like Roy Oliphant, and he's like, "Time to roll, Lily," and she's like, "Raiju." Everyone shows up. Chael, and he's just like a hulking ghost of a person because he's
Lily's like
Aether
talking to
Awakened.
the Supreme, like, "You took everything from me. I don't even know who you are."
Oh man. I think, the saddest thing that could happen in this series is if they fight the Supreme and Skipper Aether Awakens and they lose him forever. That'd be very sad. I was thinking about that the other day. What would his Aether Awaken even look like? You know what I mean?
It would just sort of be like a giant speaker man.
Yeah.
There's
Like he'd
constant,
grow like a
explosion
grotesquely large heart that's like bigger than the rest of him. It's just pumping and like AoE
Well, it's not always a
damaging.
transformation. That was... Chaos was specifically a transformation because he like built armor like out of his blades. It just sort of did that up to 11.
Skipper's would be like his heartbeat going 600 beats per second.
Yeah.
And he's just
like a
shooting stuff
constant
out.
explosion around him.
Yeah, he's just on crack.
But yeah, that was the end of Arc 7.
Yeah, that was good. And if you ever were to make another Amazon book, I think this wraps up nicely, like with that ending. Arcs 4 through 7.
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7. Because 6 is kind of short, so.
Next arc is going to be fucking nuts, though. This is one of the big arcs. This is like the big boy.
I'm excited. Are you planning to release more books like you did with the first
I am
one?
planning, though. Yeah, I want a bit of a buffer in between books, though, is the thing.
What I'm curious, though, is I wonder when Aetheral Space is finished if you'll like try and take a book to a publisher, like a different book or Aetheral Space or something.
It wouldn't be
So
Aetheral Space if I tried that.
Yeah. But I would definitely, like, if you write, like, was it just because, like, it was already a web serial they said that?
Well, that's with web serials. Traditional publishing doesn't sort of mesh well with that because you'd need exclusive rights for the traditional publishing.
Right. Would you think about writing something that's exclusive rights outside of, like, web serial in the future? Because I think you're good enough. Like, clearly you're good enough. I think you would be a really good YA author.
Thank you.
I think
you nailed the times when I have to have like a cannibal come on. Like,
yeah, doing the cannibal. Well, I don't know. It's still like young adult.
Yeah,
I don't know. Does young adult mean teenager? I thought it was like teenager to young 20s.
Yeah. So there's a bubbly area there.
I am curious how if books have any sort of rating, because I distinctly remember being a young child and reading books that had some fucked up shit in them. like even at the school library. Yeah. I don't know. Because even if something awful happens in a book, it's not as like traumatic as seeing it in real life.
I'm curious though, if people watching, like, what have you thought about Arc 7? I don't know I'm as confident in Arc 7 as Arc 6, for example, because that was like I really liked writing Arc 6.
I have mixed feelings on Arc 7. I really like the characters as always. I really think you do characters super well. I am starting to see returning themes with how some of the characters speak and act, but it's not like jarring
That's
enough.
That's something I notice as well. I try and get around it, but I notice it.
But I don't think it was like bad enough that it takes away from them. The characters were good. The fights, you write action well as always. I think the main things that are starting to get are the one thing was like we've been only getting little morsels of main plot, and we're 7 arcs in. And I'm not trying to compare like you're not as good as, but like when I read say like Worm or something, 7 arcs, a lot more plot happens than has happened in Aetheral Space, if that makes sense.
Right. I think though it's a lot more episodic Aetheral Space though.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing.
Like a One Piece sort of format, but instead of
yes.
Sort of
and I don't think that's a bad thing, especially for a web serial. But I could definitely see how some people would be turned off by that.
It's a different kind of story, but I get what you mean, though. Yeah.
Yes, but the only other thing I think I would note is I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of a lack of theme. Like, clearly you know how to write themes. I've read your other work, like other short stories and articles you've written. You know how to engage them. But I feel like oftentimes there's, like, a lack of theme, or the themes are very basic. Like, I can't honestly think of a good theme for Arc 7. Like, I was joking, like, oh, revenge will solve all your problems, but, like, what was sort of the theme going in? I'm curious if you had one, or if it was more just, like, the plot.
It's not like a solid theme in mind, but there's a lot of stuff like with Rico specifically, like violence. What toll does that take on you as a person? That's why he like fucking gives it up all at the end and leaves to do his own thing.
I think that might be part of the dissonance I was getting from is because Rico, I actually think, had the most interesting story. He had the mentor that was like, Aether wasn't always for fighting, and I was like, I want to see more of this. And he has that resolution, and he does, sure, but he's not joining the group, and we know that, like, the rest of the story is still going to have a lot more fighting, obviously. Right, but I really want to explore some of that side stuff more.
Of course, it's intensive violence as well, because, like, everyone in this arc that, like, did some selfish violence, like Carla, Eli Masadora. I don't know if I'd count Cot in that, because it's less an act of violence, more acts of betrayal. They get fucked by their own actions, basically. Because Carla, if
I would say
Andrew wouldn't have been there to fucking chow down.
Right. I also think this arc by far had the most death. Like, obviously, a lot of extras get killed, or like the villains do, and I guess you could say the Elephants were villains, but like a lot of characters we had come to like died compared to any other arc. Which I found very interesting. And I was wondering about that, too. I remember in the beginning of the arc, I was like, you're setting up this crime syndicate to be like, really likable, but aren't they, like, fucking evil?
Well, yeah. Individually likable does not mean good people.
Yes, exactly. I think Rico hit that well. He's like, just because Roy is less of an asshole doesn't mean what he's doing still isn't awful. But yeah, I would say, like, my criticisms aside, I'm still really enjoying Aetheral Space. I don't want it to be taken as anything but. I look forward to reading this every week. It's really fun following a web serial in real time instead of reading one after it's been finished, which is what I usually do. And I always enjoy your work. We have a fun energy. I like doing the voices. I like wondering what happens next. And we've gotten to a point, even though it's mostly like Corgo and Ham and JTKC now, like where I'm not the only Aetheral Space fan, so I can like nerd out and we like design OCs and talk about ideas.
I love seeing that,
and it's fun.
That brings me joy. A lot of joy.
Yes, we need more people doing that because, unironically, I think Aetheral Space is a really solid web serial compared to a lot of the ones I read. Because I was talking to JTKC about this the other day, right? And you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not trying to be ignorant, but I feel like there's a few really good web serials, there's a few mediocre ones, and then there's like a lot of really bad ones.
Well, you can say that
or
like
like
any sort of medium art there, really.
Yeah, because there's
no
just so much,
shortage
it's the internet.
of
but like, I would actually
want to be like snobby and be like, all right, well now I'm good.
Yeah, no, and this is tricky for you. You have to be careful with what you say because you're the author and you're trying to be humble. I respect, but like as a fan and not just your friend, I actually think Aetheral Space probably toes the line between like I would say it's just under one of like the great web serials, but I would put it well above the mediocre category. Like it toes that line of greatness, and I think if it just had more awareness, more eyes on it, it would blow up and have a fandom. Like, yeah, I could totally see people like picking a Aetheral Space Tumblr Sexy Man of the Week or people tweeting about it.
Wu Ming,
it's
that's
got
what he's
that.
for. That's why he's here.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like it's got all the markings. It's good writing. It's fun. It's actually it's not literally it's not perfect, but it's really good.
Nothing's perfect.
I just wish it had more attention. But no, it's so hard to get people into it. Corgo, I know, has been doing a great job. People have been telling their friends, but it's been very slow.
Corgo is the entire PR department.
Yeah. I've tried so long to get people to read Aetheral Space and no one did, so I was like low-key kind of like jealous when Corgo was like, oh, I got 5 of my friends to read it, and I was like, fucking hell. No one reads any of my recs. I must be bad at recommending stuff. But, overall, I still really like this. I stand by the review I left on your Royal Road at like 2.1, I think. Mm-hmm. I still think it's really good. The characters are obviously the strongest
if you're
part.
enjoying it, why don't you also leave a review on the Royal Road?
Yeah, honestly, low key, like guys, I hate to be the YouTube. You know us. We're never like, oh, drop a like and subscribe and hit the bell.
99% of you aren't subscribed.
You know us, but like if you're one of the 20 people who watch these Aetheral Space videos, like this is a really good series, and leaving a review on Royal Road really does help give it more visibility, and I think build that audience. So if you have the time and wouldn't mind, it would mean the world to us. I think the series like genuinely deserves it. And I just hope to continue to see what you do, and I'm curious to see how you'll improve, what'll change, so on and so forth. But yeah, this has been dragging on long enough. We should wrap this up.
I love these little clips we have. Maybe one day I will start doing the drawings again.
Ooh, yeah! I still want to do that trailer where you like... Today. I want you to do the MS Paint so I can do the fucking Elden Ring trailer and like rewrite a script for it. It'd be so much fun.
Well, I'll talk to you all later. I hope you enjoyed it. Arc 7, I really hope you enjoy Arc 8. I've got some big plans for Arc 8.
I'm excited. You've hyped
really
it up
hyped.
like,
you can tell when I'm really hyped. Like Arc 6 I was just hyped for as well, so I'm hoping I can do Arc 8 justice.
Awesome. Alright, see you guys next time. Bye!
Bye!